What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the weekly game week preview, obviously for game week 5, as it says on the screen. International break is nearly over. I've seen a lot of tweets saying that this has been the longest international break ever. I think they all feel like that, but we're nearly done. In this video, as always, I've taken some of your questions and key topics for this week on Twitter and YouTube and put them into the video. So there's things like Arsenal's fixture turn, should we be benching Pukki, and obviously looking at captaincy as well for game week 5. So not strictly about my team this video. That video has already gone out yesterday. If you want to check it out, have a look after this video. Otherwise, let's just jump into this one. So we'll start off by looking at Arsenal's fixtures. They do have a bit of a fixture swing in game week 5. Obviously, they've had the likes of Spurs and Liverpool to play already, but it gets a bit easier from here for about the next 12 game weeks. And fixture swings are definitely something that I like, and something as FPL managers that you should be looking at. You want to try and get ahead of the game. You don't always want to be reactive and bring in the players that have just scored points. Obviously, we know the likes of Aubameyang's been pretty consistent already, but you want to get ahead of the game. You want to bring these players in before everyone else does, get their points, get some few price rises, and then start looking for the next fixture swing, or maybe when you need to offload players and go from there. Now, it is a good way to get ahead. So, for example, in the next 12 games, they only play one top 6 side, which is Man United. I think that's in game week 7. So before that, they have Watford away and Villa at home. So if you could nail the right player this week, then it gets to game week 7 when they play Man United, and maybe you've got a really good player in, but then people are a bit wary about bringing someone in against Man United. So maybe you get another week out of them, a few more price rises before everyone starts to jump on. But like I said, over the next 12, they've only got one top 6 side, which is Man United. I know a lot of people saying Man United aren't looking great right now, but in terms of sort of expected goals conceded, they've not been doing too badly. So the quality of the chances they're giving up, not completely off. So I don't know if that'll be an easy fixture for Arsenal after all, but the rest of the fixtures are looking good, and Watford away and Villa at home next are really decent. The only problem I have really is that we've seen a lot of rotation from Emery in the past. I don't see why that wouldn't continue. Obviously, Aubameyang started all 4 games. Will that continue with Europe and stuff like that? And it could be a worry getting the player right. And the other thing you have to do is compare them to non-Arsenal options. It's not just a case of Arsenal have got good fixtures, have got to bring them in. What about other players as well? So if you go for Aubameyang, for example, it means probably no Salah or Mane or Sterling and Sterling and Aguero. So you've probably got, like a lot of people, who've got one from Man City, Sterling or Aguero, one from Liverpool, Salah or Mane, and maybe De Bruyne to fit in as well. So obviously De Bruyne is cheaper than Aubameyang, but they're pretty closely matched. So you've probably got to drop one of them in order to get Aubameyang, and maybe you don't want to do that. You've got Lacazette. Izzy is nailed on as Aubameyang. He's got a little bit of an injury right now. We don't know if he's going to be fit and available. If you bring him in, he's similar price to Vardy, who's nailed on penalties. Also a similar price to Firmino as well, who you'd expect to start most games. So even if you look at the likes of Pepe, who looks quite intriguing, I think he looks like a bit of a flair player. I think he'd be exciting to watch. And one of those players you want to own because he is exciting to watch. Still probably got a little bit... a little bit of a worry about him in front of goal. I don't know if he's been trying too hard in the first few games that he started. But he's had a couple of starts now, so hopefully going forward he'll start to get in the points. And obviously if they start with that Aubameyang, Lacazette and Pepe front 3 and maybe have Ceballos in there as well, then you'd expect goals from that team. It's just whether or not they're worth it for the money versus the other players you can get. So Pepe, you've got like Son, that's the same price. De Bruyne, who we've already spoken about, who's a similar price. So it starts to get difficult to fit them in. If I was on a wild card, I'd probably look at getting an Arsenal player in and just hoping that the fixture swing really goes well and that my players start. I think Ceballos at 5.7 million is a pretty good price. But again, you've got the likes of Daniel James and Mount at a similar price, who are probably more likely to start every game. But let's see what Emery does going forward. I think it's just a bit too much of an unknown in like defence as well. Once Tierney's back, maybe Holding as well and Bellerin. Let's see if they can start keeping more clean sheets. And I like someone like Tierney or Bellerin maybe for attacking returns as well as clean sheets, but we'll have to see if they can shore up that defence. I think the fact that Emery rotates so much is a bit of a pain as an FPL manager. And does he know his best 11? I don't know. He probably does, but he doesn't seem to play it week in, week out. So I think Arsenal have got a really good team. At least a good first 11 team. I just want to see them all together. I want to see them all fit, see what Emery does, and then make a decision. So it's probably too early for me. I think, like I said, the likes of De Bruyne versus Pepe, I'm just going to stick with De Bruyne now. He's in great form. Man City are always going to score goals, and they've got good fixtures as well. So that's a tough sell for me. But if you're on a wild card, then it might be worth taking a little bit more of a risk. And obviously, if you do get a player in at kind of the 9.5 price point, you've got a lot of other players that you could swap them to. So I'm going to talk about benching Pukki pretty quick, because I did speak about this in my team selection video, but good few people asked about it again for this video. So right now, obviously, he's in red hot form. 5 goals in the opening 4 game weeks is pretty impressive for any player, let alone Pukki, or I'm not sure most of us thought would do that for the opening 4. And underlying stats-wise are really good as well, having plenty of shots in the box, which is nice to see, and is right up there in terms of attackers and out of the whole league. He's 38.5% owned though, so that would worry me a little bit. We shouldn't worry about ownership, I know, but if he does really well and the player you bring in doesn't, that could really hurt, because most managers, let's be honest, are going to play him, and probably you could argue rightly so. But at the end of the day, it's only the points that matter. So if you bring someone in that equals his points, it doesn't matter that he's 38.5% owned. You've still matched everyone that's played him. But obviously, you're hoping that the player you bring in gets absolutely more points, and that's going to depend on whether your bench is actually good enough. So if you're thinking of playing the likes of Dendoncker or Greenwood, I'm not quite sure that's good enough to be playing ahead of Pukki, who's, like I said, in such good form. If you compare it to someone like Lundstrom, and this is the player that I would basically be choosing between, Lundstrom got a little bit of a potential for attacking returns, probably not as much as Pukki, but could get a clean sheet down the other end. Playing Southampton at home, Southampton will probably be without Redmond as well, which isn't going to help their cause. They have looked fairly good attacking wise, I think, especially like against even like the likes of Liverpool. Should have scored more, maybe a little bit unlucky, but I just think Sheffield United at home is a good chance of a clean sheet for Lundstrom. So that's what I'm considering. And the one thing that falls for me is Pukki really going to get more than 2 goals? That's the thing that keeps going around in my head. Or is he going to get 2 or more? It seems unlikely to me against Man City. The key question I suppose you've got to ask yourself is, how bad will they be without Laporte? I don't think it's going to trouble them that much. I don't think they're going to suddenly start conceding that many more goals. You know, Norwich are probably going to press like they've done before. They're going to play out from the back, and that's all well and good. But how long can they do that in a game against Man City? You're going to have most of the possession, you would imagine. And I feel like it's going to be a bit of a rout for Man City, and I don't think Norwich are going to concern them too much. That might be famous last words. So could I see Pukki getting a goal? Maybe. That's only 6 points. Do I take the risk and play Lundstrom, who could get a clean sheet and maybe an attack and return as well, and hope that Pukki blanks? That's kind of what I'm thinking about. I am tempted by it. Ownership does worry me. I don't think it's very likely he scores more than 1 goal, so I don't see it as a huge risk. I've already benched King, and that wasn't too much of a worry, but we'll see. Those are the things I think you need to consider, though, if you're thinking about doing it. So quickly, before we talk about captaincy, let's talk about some other bits that I've seen or that people have brought up on Twitter and YouTube. So the first thing is Mendy, Benjamin Mendy at Man City has tweeted out, or I think he put it on Instagram, that he's ready. That's all it said, ready. Obviously a picture of him in training. My first thought is, how much or how many times have we heard this, that he's ready, he's going to be playing. We heard that he was going to be out at the start of the season, then he was going to be fit, now he's out for a month, now he's back in training. And obviously, the key thing is you're probably not going to bring him in. Way too much of a risk right now until you know he's going to be playing. The main reason people are talking about this is because it's Zinchenko. And I'm a Zinchenko owner at all. And I'm going to be honest, I just completely not worried at all right now. Zinchenko isn't the same price as the likes of a Trent Alexander-Arnold or a Robertson. He's a bit cheaper. It doesn't feel as bad if he misses out. Obviously, you want the clean sheet, which I expect Man City to get plenty of over the next few game weeks. But it's not a massive concern if he misses out. And once he has missed out, once he has lost his place to Mendy, if that happens, I'm sure it will at some point, but kind of if or when that happens, then you can think about taking him out. Maybe swapping to Otamendi, swapping to a different cheaper player as well, maybe get some money in the bank. But until Mendy actually plays a first team game, I'm not really worrying myself over it. I just think he's been out for a while. Surely he's going to get a cameo appearance or play maybe for the under-23s or whatever they play for outside of the first team first, and then we can worry about it. But it's been so long, I just don't see why he gets rushed. It's not like Man City are doing too badly without him. So if you've got Zinchenko, I personally just don't worry for now. If it happens, it happens. We make a transfer and move on from there. A lot of people talking about Daniel James. Is he essential? Is he going to keep up this red-hot form? Obviously, he's done really well so far. Scored 3 goals already this season, and he scored for Wales in the international break as well. And he's taken his goals really well. They've been class finishes, let's be honest. Apart from the Chelsea one, which was maybe a little bit lucky. Now, in the first 2 games, he wasn't shooting that much. Over the first 4 fixtures, he's had 9 shots in the box, but 7 of those have come in the last 2 games. So he seems to have got his shooting boots on in the last 2 games. Only created a couple of chances, though. So chances created, not great. But goal threat is pretty good. Now, the thing is, he's only had 6 shots on target and he scored 3 goals. He's probably not going to keep that up. But if he can keep up that rate of shooting, then suddenly his chances of getting goals obviously improves. and he's full of confidence. He's got his place locked in that Man United side. I just don't see him getting rotated right now. He's in good form. We don't really have a lot of options to bring him anyway. His pace is a worry to defenders. It's how Solskjaer wants to play, trying to counter-attack where they can. And I just think Leicester at home and West Ham away are not bad fixtures. They're not brilliant, but they're not the worst fixtures you could bring him in for. So Mount's got maybe 2 more difficult fixtures. Mount's also more expensive right now. Trossard is injured too. So I think Daniel James is a pretty good bet right now. I think at that price it's not too much of a risk. Will he keep up scoring 3 goals in 4 game weeks or 3 goals from 6 shots on target? Probably not, but he looks like a player that's going to get in the box and shoot. I think a lot of it will depend whether he gets to stay on the left. Obviously, cutting inside and shooting he's looked pretty good at, but obviously once Martial's back, Rashford might go back there, and Martial push back up front, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think Daniel James is a good bet. He's not going to keep up this form. But he doesn't necessarily need to match exactly what he's doing now. Even if he dropped down a bit, he would still be good value. And if you can increase his chances that he's creating for other teammates, that would be good too. And lastly, Haller versus Abraham, obviously very similar prices. Abraham's, I think, scored 4 in the last 2. Haller scored 3. So they're very close. Now, a lot of people saying that Abraham scored his goals versus Sheffield United and Norwich, which is fair enough. But Haller scored his against Watford and Norwich, so it's not too dissimilar in my opinion. Looking at the underlying stats, Abraham's played 16 less minutes, had 2 more goal attempts in total, same in the box, but he's created 6 chances, which is interesting. Haller's actually created none, so you want strikers for goals, of course, but in FPL, if they can also top that up with a few assists here or there, that's pretty decent. If you look at expected goals, Haller's just about in front. They've had a similar amount of big chances, 4 for Haller versus 3 for Abraham. And if you look at fixtures, I even think they're quite similar. Chelsea's are probably worse over the next 2. Wolves away and Liverpool at home is probably worse than Villa away and Man United at home, who West Ham have got. So West Ham's are slightly better. But then after that, Chelsea got Brighton, Southampton, Newcastle versus Bournemouth, Palace and Everton. So I would say almost Chelsea's are slightly better after the next 2. West Ham's slightly worse. But overall for next 5, Haller's probably just about in front. So he's probably the one I look for. But I was quite impressed with Abraham when I checked his underlying stats. I've watched him. I think he's looked pretty good. Yes, they were easier teams. We'll see what he can do against more difficult opposition. But underlying stats-wise, I was quite surprised that he was so high up when it comes to comparing him with Abraham. So Chelsea also missing quite a few players. Kante and Rudiger probably not going to affect things too much going forward. When the likes of Hudson-Odoi are back, Mount gets moved back into the number 10 position. I think that could be good for Abraham. So we'll have to monitor that one. If I was bringing one in this week, it'd probably be Haller. So let's touch on Captaincy. And I will say I'm recording this video before all the international games for the international break are over. So the likes of Sterling, for example, are playing in the second game. I know that. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get, but it is a little bit of concern that he's played in both matches, and I'll touch on that when I talk about Man City. But looking at Liverpool versus Newcastle first, I think this is a good fixture. The good thing is for Mane and Salah, they've both been rested over the international break, so they're going to be fully re-energised, as Salah said on his social media as well, which is good. My only worry about that game is how much Newcastle will sit back. We saw them do it against Spurs when they played Spurs away. It's just whether or not Liverpool have more in them to unlock that Newcastle defence and maybe get an early goal and see them kind of come out of defence a bit more and give them more space in behind. But Spurs really struggled. They did better when Eriksen came on. Obviously, you'd expect Liverpool to start with pretty much a full-strength squad, even though Europe's starting soon. One player I will say, and I'm talking about him, but I know I wouldn't captain him myself, but I've got a feeling Trent Alexander-Arnold could be a really good option. Maybe even Robertson as well. He's due an attacking return, because if Newcastle do sit back, then you'd expect Liverpool to pump more players forward, create an overload, maybe create a bit more of a problem for the defence. And they're definitely going to do that, as they do for most games anyway, by pushing Trent and Robertson high up the pitch. That's going to keep Newcastle pegged back, and also give them more players to attack with. So I think a clean sheet almost feels guaranteed for Liverpool this week. Famous last words, because I own 2 of their players. I feel like clean sheet's locked in, and then maybe some attacking returns for the fullbacks as well. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Norwich versus Man City, I think that could be a bit of a rout for Man City, as I've already said. I think Norwich aren't going to play any differently, and that's going to play into Man City's hands. I really like Sterling, but it does worry me a little bit about playing in both internationals, so I'm going to have to see what Pep says in the press conferences. Obviously, he's probably not going to say that he's definitely benched or not, but if he gives a bit of an indication to players needing rest and stuff, then that would be interesting. Aguero hasn't played in the international break, so if you own him, he looks like an awesome captain this week. I'd almost argue that he's the best one, because he hasn't played minutes, and I do think Man City are going to put 4 or 5 past Norwich. They've definitely got the ability to do so. Liverpool have already done it. Obviously, Liverpool are at home, but I don't think it's going to make too much difference to Man City. Looking at kind of other players, Aubameyang's been pretty consistent, but not really had that massive haul yet, or not consistently kind of 8 or 9 points, a game that you'd like to see. if you look at the underlying stats of Watford, I know they've not done well in the opening four and they've obviously replaced the manager. They've not actually done that badly. They've kind of been middle of the road in terms of shots conceded and shots that they're taking. So I don't see this necessarily as a walkover for Arsenal. And without anything really to back this up, it just feels like one of those games that could stumble Arsenal. And obviously we don't know exactly who's going to play. Maybe there'll be some rotation. Perhaps they'll carry on with the Lacazette, Aubameyang, Pepe front three. And they will cause Watford problems. But then you've got a new manager bounce. And I don't know, that game would put me off. And then Spurs versus Palace, that seems like a good fixture on paper. But we've seen good fixtures on paper for Spurs already. Kane versus Newcastle. I'd expect Crystal Palace to defend quite well, if not as well as Newcastle did. So I think that's a bit of a worry for me. So for me, it's Liverpool, so Salah or Mane, or Man City. Sterling if you're not worried about minutes, or Aguero if you own him. Possibly one of the Liverpool defenders, but I never like to captain the defender, so I wouldn't try and push someone into that. I do think there's a good chance of points this week. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of what I said. Is there any counterpoints you would make? Anything you agree with or disagree? Let's have a discussion below. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Always appreciated. Really helps the channel grow, which has been going great recently. So appreciate all your support on that. And if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the next videos are going live, and also when I'm live streaming, which will be 9 o'clock UK time on Thursday, going through all your questions before we get into Game Week 5. And we might even have a Game Week 5 deadline stream this week. We'll have to see how that goes. Otherwise, I'll leave this video there. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers all.